This is for 3rd grade ELA, text set 11, Facing Challenges. Did you ever practice doing something and then got scared when the time came to do it in front of other people? That's what happens to the boy in the story I'm going to read today. The title of the book is Chiang and the Dragon's Dance. It is written and illustrated by Ann Wallace. Raise your hand if you know what a tradition is. A tradition is a way of thinking or doing something that has been done by a group of people for a long time. The boy's fear has to do with a special tradition in his family. Let's find out about the tradition and the boy. From the time Chiang stood only as high as his grandfather's knees, he had dreamed of dancing the dragon's dance. Now the first day of the year, the dragon had arrived, and his dream was to come true. Tonight he would dance with his grandfather, but instead of being excited, Chiang was so scared he wanted to melt into his shoes. He knew he could never dance well enough to make grandfather proud of him. He stopped sweeping the floor of his father's family shop and looked into the street where his mother and father were busy with other shopkeepers, hanging up paper lanterns shaped like animals, fish, and birds. So the dragon's dance is part of the celebration of the Chinese New Year's. It's time to practice our parts in the dragon's dance for the last time before the other dances arrive. Chiang, the afternoon is almost over, called Grandfather Wu from the bake room behind the shop. If I were a rabbit, I could run far away from here, Chiang said to himself. But then Mama, Papa, and Grandfather really would be ashamed of me. So very slowly he walked into the bake room where Grandfather Wu stood waiting. He was wearing the splendid, fierce dragon's head that he would put on again that night from the parade. Pick up the silk tail on the floor behind me, said his grandfather, from inside the dragon's head, and together we will be the most magnificent dragon that anyone has ever seen. Chiang did as he was asked, but as his grandfather started to dance, Chiang did not move. Grandfather can hide under the dragon's head, he whispered. But if I trip or fall, I have nowhere to hide. Everyone will say, there goes clumsy Chiang. Grandfather Wu stopped dancing. A dragon must have a tail as well as a head, he said gently. Chiang looked down at his shoes. I can't dance the dragon's dance, he said. You have trained for a long time, Chiang. Tonight, when you dance, you will bring tears of pride to your parents' eyes. Now come, join me in practice just as we have practiced before. But when Chiang tried to leap, he tripped, stumbled, and fell. Why had he ever thought he could dance the dragon's dance? Why had he ever wanted to? He was much too clumsy. He jumped up and ran away from his grandfather, out of the shop, into the market street, and stopped long enough to pick up a rabbit lantern, poked 2 holes for eyes, and shoved it over his head. Look, look, it's the dragon's tail, called Mrs. Law, dangling a speckled salmon for Chiang to see. Tonight when you dance, the great dragon who lives in the clouds above the mountains will be honored, and next year he will fill our nest with beautiful fish like this. Chiang turned away, and he knew he will grow oranges of a size and color never seen before, called Mr. Ku. What they say is true, added Mr. Singh. The great dragon will bring prosperity and good fortune if you dance pleases him. Okay, so why does Chiang run away? But Chiang remembered what one of the other dancers had once told him. If the dance was clumsy, the great dragon would be angry. Then he might toss the fruit from the trees and flood to the valley. It will be all my fault, thought Chiang. Grandfather Wu will have to choose someone else to dance with him. He waited to hear no more and raced across the market street. Our fish, called Mrs. Lu. Our oranges, called Mr. Ku. Chiang turned the corner. Our dance, called Grandfather Wu from the doorway. So, why does Chiang run away? Looking out through the lantern, Chiang hurried along the road by the sea to the public library, which he had visited many times when he wanted to be alone. He opened the door and ran up the stairs, round and around, higher and higher, up to the door at the top that led out to the roof. From his perch in the sky, he could see the mountains rising above the sea, and below him and the animal lanterns, which would glow like tiny stars tonight. Ching Chang felt happier than he had ever had for many days. Alright, so look at the illustration. Where do you think you are? Where do you think you are? Do you think you are looking at the staircase from above or below? Why do you think that? I never expected to meet a rabbit on top of this roof, called a strange voice. Ching Chang turned around quickly. A woman carrying a mop and pail was coming toward him. I'm not a rabbit, he said shyly. I am Ching Chang, and he pulled out off the lantern. Oh, this is much better, she said. Greetings, Ching Chang. My name is Puyi. May I enjoy the view with you? She didn't wait for a reply. In a little while I'll be watching the New Year's parade from here. I used to dance the dragon's dance when I was young, but not anymore. My feet are too old, and they are covered with corns. My grandfather dances the dragon's dance, said Ching Chang, and his corns are as old as yours. Puyi laughed. His old shoes may move his old bones, but my feet will never dance again. A wonderful idea suddenly came to Ching Chang. What if he had found someone to dance in his place? He would show Puyi his part in the dance right now. No one would see them if they tripped or fell. You can help me practice what my grandfather taught me, he said. Oh, my creaky bones, what a funny sight that will be, said Puyi. You can dance, he told her cautiously. Ching Chang gave a little jump, but Puyi jumped too. He shook slowly at first, and she shook too. Next they leaped into the air, landed together, and spun on their heels. Before long Puyi had forgotten her creaky bones, and Ching Chang stumbled and fell. Let's try again, said Puyi, picking him up. So I wonder if Puyi will dance for him, for Ching Chang, in Ching Chang's place. While they danced, the darkness had crept down slowly from the mountains to the city below. Then from far off, Ching Chang heard the lilting tune of pigeons with whistles tied to their tail feathers. They had been set free from their cages in the marketplace and were flying high above the buildings. Ching Chang knew that this meant the New Year festival had begun. We must go, Puyi. We're late, said Ching Chang. The pigeons are flying free. I'm not late, she replied. I'm staying here. But Ching Chang pulled her by the hand, and they hurried down the stairs together, round and round, down to the market street. The sound of firecrackers exploded in their ears, while the eager crowd buzzed and hummed. Ching Chang pushed his way forward, but Puyi pulled back. In the noise and confusion, Ching Chang let go of her hand, and suddenly he came face to face with the dragon, whose head was wreathed in smoke. Where have you been, Ching Chang? I have been sick with worry, called Grandfather Wu in a muffled voice. Ching Chang did not reply. Come now, take up the tail before the smoke disappears and everyone can see us. Ching Chang stood still, his feet frozen to the ground. The clamor of the street grew louder, stinging his ears. I can't dance, Grandfather, he said. Grandfather Wu turned away. You can dance, Ching Chang. Follow me. Look, look, here comes the dragon, called Mr. Singh. The crowd set up a cheer that bounced off windows and doors and jumped into the sky. Ching Chang was trapped. Slowly he stooped and picked up the tail. Grandfather Wu shook the dragon's head fiercely until Ching Chang started to kick up his heels to the beat of the thundering drum. Then suddenly Ching Chang stumbled, but instead of falling he did a quick step and recovered his balance. Excitedly he leaped into the air and higher and higher again. And as the dance went on, Ching Chang's feet moved more surely, his steps grew firmer, and his leaps more daring. Mrs. Law and Mr. Ku cheered from their market shops, while people poured out of their houses onto balconies and sidewalks, filling the streets. High in the sky, flags of fire and falling moons burst into light. They sizzled and sparkled, rocketed straight up, and whistled to the ground. So how does Ching Chang get over his fear dancing the dragon's dance? Just then Ching Chang caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Puyi. Ching Chang leaped to the sidewalk and pulled her into the street. I can't, Ching Chang, she said, pulling away. My bones, my corns, my knees. Puyi, see, yes, you can. Ching Chang assured her. Look at me. Hesitantly she took hold of their tail, and together they kicked up their heels just as they had on the rooftop, while the throngs of people cheered them up on Up one, straight, and down another they danced, to the beat of the thundering drum. All too soon the dragon lifted its head and shook its tail at the last time. The dance was over. Puyi hugged Ching Chang close. Grandfather Wu smiled inside the dragon's head. "Bring your new friend to our home for dinner, Ching Chang," he said. Puyi and Ching Chang hopped quickly off the doorstep and into the bake shop. The family exchanged gifts of fine teas and wooden boxes, new clothes and small red envelopes of lucky money. Then they sat together to share plates of meat, dumplings, and carp, bowls of steaming soup, and trays of delicious pastries and cakes and fresh fruit. "To Ching Chang, the very best dragon's tail I have ever seen," said Grandfather Wu, raising his glass in a toast. Ching Chang's face glowed with pride. "To a prosperous year of the dragon," he said, raising his glass to his mama, papa, grandfather, and his new friend, Puyi. "So do you think Ching Chang will remember this celebration for many years? Why or why not?"